What is up, my ducks and drakes? Welcome to the Crowded Lake, and today we're going to be reading chapter 23 of A Lesson in Practicality by ResidentAnchor on AO3. If you'd like to support the creator or the fic itself, do so with the links in the description below. With that being said, here's chapter 23. What comes next? Roman helped Thomas sit on his couch, ignoring the protests the others was giving the entire time. Patton placed a mug on the coffee table in front of him, and Thomas sighed, leaning back into his couch. Guys, I'm fine. No complaining, Virgil called out from the other side of the sectional sofa in Thomas's apartment. He shifted comfortably under the blankets and turned his head that sat atop a pillow. At least they're not acting like they are with me. You died, Patton cried out. Or at least your heart stopped temporarily, which means you sort of died. Shush, drink your cocoa. He placed a second mug on the coffee table. I only died a little bit, he spoke with a smirk, turning and looking at the mug. Thanks, Pat. I'll get up in a second. You feeling any better? Patton kneeled down and placed a gentle hand on Virgil's forehead. In response, Virgil shut his eyes and relaxed. Everything hurts, but I'm okay. Logan walked into the room and sat down carefully by Virgil's feet. We did have pain relievers at the apartment, but until things get sorted, you'll have to make do. I got stuff from the pharmacy a few blocks over, Roman called out. It's the best you're gonna get at this rate. Not until the insurance kicks in and we can afford to get some of our stuff back. In the meantime, thanks for helping us out, Thomas. Patton turned and smiled. Well, it's no problem, really. I mean, you kind of knew where I lived, and I didn't, so... Thomas rubbed the back of his neck. Patton, right? Patton perked up and turned to face Thomas completely. Yes! What else? Thomas shut his eyes for a moment. We met in a dog park? We met in a grocery store, and I chased after you to a dog park. Close enough. Patton jumped up and ran over, wrapping Thomas in a hug. I'm so glad you're starting to remember. Well, it's not permanent, of course. Logan removed his glasses and wiped them off. Not that he knew that at the time, and I tried my best to remedy it as quickly as I could. He replaced his glasses and smiled over at Thomas. It's only a matter of time as things start coming back to you. Roman patted him on the back. Yes, I'm sure it will come back to you. You looked at your friend Joan for one moment and remembered them completely as if nothing happened. Also, you just screamed their name into the sky for a bit. Yeah, that's true, Thomas smirked at the thought. They also yelled at you all for getting me into trouble in the first place. You're one of the family now, kiddo. We're all in this together. No matter how much you try to escape. Virgil carefully sat himself up onto the couch, swinging his legs off as he grimaced and brought himself upright. They didn't hide their abilities from Thomas, and surprisingly, it turned out better the second time. When Thomas had accidentally created a copy of himself, creating his version of 2, Patton was super excited, despite the panic cries that short amount of time 2 was out. Thomas took a moment and then yelled at Patton, telling him to remember what happened last time on the roof. Patton was in shock, and Thomas just elaborated, bits of memory coming back to him. When Joan and Talon had come to check on Thomas, they both walked in on him making things float around his living room. Logan reteaching him simple things that he had picked up on rather quickly. Their first meeting with the others was more chaos since Thomas couldn't remember much, but now that he was almost back to his old self, they finally hounded the others about their powers and how they met Thomas. They all shared bits of their story, letting Thomas ask questions and even answer things he did actually remember. As more time passed, his memory would repair itself to everyone's relief. It was slow and couldn't be forced or rushed, but Joan had reassured that a day on the town, doing their favorite things, would help Thomas tremendously. Talon even said they would follow along, making sure Joan wasn't just getting them into trouble, which is what sometimes would happen. Virgil let out a pained groan. I feel like I was slammed against the wall. Hard. Well, I had to shock you a lot to get your heart to start working, okay? Roman looked away abashed. I tried my best. Virgil leaned forward and grabbed his mug, not taking a sip, but rather enjoying the warmth it brought. Yeah, well, I guess I could say thank you, or whatever. He looked away from the others and slowly took a sip from his mug, being careful not to burn himself. In the meantime, we should get things sorted so Thomas doesn't have to house us forever. Logan tried distracting the attention away from Virgil, who was careful. We've done enough and should be getting back to our families and our own lives. Whoa, slow down there, Poindexter. Roman finally dragged his eyes off of Virgil and turned to Logan. We can go back to our families, yeah, but we all have to start looking for another apartment together, too. I'm not sure about you, but I don't want to give up what we just started. Wasn't your whole point to bring us together, to not be alone anymore? Well, Logan appeared surprised by the words. I hadn't thought, after the disaster that it caused. Nonsense, Patton cried out. I don't want to go back to living alone like my pals don't exist. We can all find a nice place together again, can't we? Financially, it is a good idea, Logan muttered, talking to himself. I suppose if you're all up for it, we can start looking together. Excellent. This calls for pizza to celebrate. Roman got up and pulled out his phone. Thomas frowned and turned to Patton next to him. Do I like pizza? I don't remember. Patton stared blankly at Thomas before his face slowly lit up. Oh, my gosh. You're going to love it. I cannot wait to see this. What's the nearest place that delivers? Roman asked, typing away at his phone. Just use mine. Thomas reached into his pockets and pulled out his. I have them on speed dial. He held out his phone and watched Roman's face slowly turn before he started snickering. What? Roman grabbed his phone before typing away. Nothing, just... You don't remember if you like pizza, but you remember you have them on speed dial? Oh. Thomas shrugged. I guess I do. Oh, wait! I love garlic knots. Get some of those, too. What do you want, Logan? Patton turned and asked the other. Get whatever you want. Whatever everyone else is having is fine, Patton. No. Patton hopped off the couch and stared down the other. You're getting whatever you want. Logan simply raised a brow in confusion. Why does it matter? Because, Patton huffed and crossed his arms. You're a hero, and you're getting whatever you want. Logan felt himself grow hot as his heart started beating a bit faster. I'm not really a hero, Patton. Well, you're my hero, and I'm buying you pizza. Patton wouldn't admit how proud he was of the shade of red Logan turned after that. Okay, enough of you two, Thomas said, turning to Roman. When did this start? Roman leaned in a bit closer. Oh, poor Logan's had a crush on Patton for a while. They're not official yet, but they did go out on a date. Oh, that is the cutest thing I've ever heard, Thomas smiled, turning to the two of them. Yep. Now, when are you gonna get a date, Patton smiled over at Roman. Oh, what? Well, that's... Thomas, back me up here. I'm sorry, who are you? A few days later, and Virgil was upright and feeling more himself, which meant he was being snarky and antisocial. It was bothersome for someone so introverted to need people too much of anything, but after a day or so, the ache turned to dull pain, and now Virgil could run away from social interactions without any help. That was the very case in this instance. Virgil had escaped the scene from the living room, but not because it was too loud or too much, but because he didn't like the topic of discussion. He really needed to move since he could still hear every word from Thomas's room upstairs, mostly because he was still straining to hear. It had been a few days, and their families had been contacted accordingly. They had looked at apartments, but until insurance pulled through, they couldn't afford to move right back in together. Roman was going to be the first to leave, having already called his parents. His old room had turned into a guest room, but most of his old belongings had left behind were still there. Patton was going next, and Virgil had talked to his dad about moving back for a while himself. Logan, as usual, didn't talk about his family, but assured Thomas and the others he had a place. That's what he was dealing with now. He heard Patton go on about how he'd missed 2 and 3 and 4. His parents weren't supportive, and he was determined to make them change their minds. Still, but Virgil knew the reality. Once someone makes up their mind to the point they outright tell their child that what they are is wrong, it takes more than kind words to change it. Footsteps coming up the stairs made him freeze and hold his breath, praying the person simply needed the bathroom or something of that nature. As the bedroom door slowly pushed open, he sighed and slumped over, accepting whomever it came up to check up on him. To his surprise, it wasn't Patton or Roman. It was Logan who entered the room, quietly closing the door behind him. He walked over to the bed and sat down next to Virgil, letting silence sit comfortably around them for a moment. "Would you mind if I inquire something?" "Just ask the question." Virgil put his legs in close and kept his gaze on the floor. Logan stilled, but Virgil knew he wouldn't take offense. "We have come a long way as friends, have we not?" Virgil scoffed at that. "I know I haven't been honestly all that truthful to you in the past, and I broke your trust. I was wondering if I had ever earned it back." Virgil turned and looked up over at Logan, seeing familiar signs he usually saw in himself. Tired eyes, worried glances. His mind was probably racing with all the worst possible things Virgil could say. He leaned over and nudged Logan, smiling up at him as the other looked back. "Look, I know I don't trust easily, but you've more than proven that we're friends." Virgil turned and looked back down at the floor. "I don't remember that day, but everyone told me that you were trying to give yourself up to save me. Thomas even said that if that had worked, he was going to wipe your mind and not the other way around. If that happened, we'd be in a worse spot. Thomas wouldn't know how to reverse what he did." I can't exactly erase thoughts, but I can suppress them. I couldn't be sure he'd be able to suppress everything, but I was willing to try. The block wasn't up for long, and I was surprised at how much it damaged the creature, honestly. Everything worked out in a lot of ways, it seems. Virgil snorted and looked up at Logan with a raised eyebrow. "Our apartment burned down. Miss Thompson and a bunch of other people are dead. Thomas has a bunch of random holes in his memory, and we won't ever really know the extent of the damage it has done to him. We all have to go back home, and I think that part bothers you the most out of everything." Logan didn't answer. Not that Virgil had really expected him to. "It shouldn't have worked," he finally muttered aloud. Virgil leaned forward and watched as Logan rubbed his tired eyes. "I've tried unblocking memories I've blocked before, and it's never worked. Thomas honestly should be in a catatonic state right now, not someone with a few holes in his memory. It really shouldn't have worked, even if I had been desperate. What are you saying? Logan's nose scrunched up like it usually did when he had a few too many thoughts race through his head as he sorted through them. Low? Logan turned and looked at Virgil with a blank expression. We never found out his second ability, did we? Virgil finally sat up at the question as if he had never thought of it himself. You don't just freeze time. Roman doesn't just make electricity. Patton doesn't just create clones, and I don't just... He sighed and pulled his glasses off his face. So what if it had something to do with his secondary ability? If that's true, then that just makes me even more worried about the question that follows that. Lo, what are you trying to tell me? Logan replaced his glasses and stood up, facing Virgil. Roman's on his way up, so I'll just be quick about this. All of our powers started with one thing and evolved as we used them. But mine? I used them my whole life, unimpeded, and they only grew and grew. What if that's the same with all of us? What if they only continue to grow stronger? Logan watched the color drain from Virgil's face as the scenarios raced by. Well, no matter. We have one another, and I rather enjoy it that way. As bothersome as you all can be sometimes. We will figure it out when we get to it. Then he turned away to face the door. Or I'm simply thinking too deep into this and worrying about everything. Virgil didn't get a chance to respond before the door burst open and Roman froze, watching the two of them carefully. Sorry, am I interrupting? No. Logan adjusted his glasses on his face. I was merely running something by Virgil. He's all yours. Logan casually walked out as Roman watched him, unaware of the conversation that just followed. He turned back to Virgil and saw him pulling at the sleeves of his hoodie before he walked up and kneeled down on the floor, grabbing Virgil's hands with his own. Hey, are you okay? Virgil shrugged and turned away, not bothering to properly answer. Well, I just came up here to say thank you. His grip on Virgil's hands grew a bit stronger. For giving me a chance. Virgil looked down at Roman confused. What are you talking about? That night, on the stage. Virgil jumped in surprise, looking down at his hands as the moment replayed in his head. So many things happened that night, Virgil tried to forget about that. I told you to tell me to back off, then and there, and I would. You didn't say anything. But that's because the thing showed up. All the color returned to Virgil's face, quickly becoming red. Roman smiled devilishly and leaned in a bit. Virgil tried tugging his hands away, but Roman's grip was steadfast and firm. Oh no, you turned and walked away from me. Then 3 ran in. Then the creature showed up. You never said a word. I was going to. Virgil tugged at his hands once more. Now, let go so I could tell you off. Roman let go, and Virgil fell back onto the bed. He watched as Roman stood up, still cocky as he stared the other down. Virgil, I am at least going to earn a date out of you. Then you'll see how we were meant for each other, and there's nothing you could do about it. Fat chance. Virgil grabbed Thomas's pillow and threw it at the other. I'll never go out with you. Now, leave me alone. Virgil scowled at Roman as he held the door open for him, quickly ducking inside the small cafe. He walked up and looked around, finding the place fairly quiet except for the small gathering of people over to the side. He turned and looked back at Roman, who walked up, eyeing the group carefully before smiling down at Virgil. They both turned and walked up to the others, noticing the two at the head of the table stop and look at their approach. We're looking for Sam and Sammy, Roman asked, inspecting the group of people before him. The two at the front quickly glanced at one another before turning back. Sam, the taller man said, standing up. He motioned to the man sitting next to him. Sammy, what can we do you for? Well, our roommates came to a meeting a couple of weeks back. Roman stood up tall as he explained. Do you remember Patton and Logan? Oh, Sammy stood up next to the other. Yes, remember? They had that roommate that worked at the place charging saved? They even saw footage of it. Charging? Roman asked aloud. Oh, God, they told you, Virgil muttered, covering his face. There is no footage. I didn't bring it. I won't bring it. You're not seeing anything, he said before anyone could ask. He looked back up and saw a few faces fall in disappointment. Well, pull up a chair. Sam motioned to a few spare chairs at a nearby table. We always welcome newcomers. Roman held up his hands, giving an apologetic smile. Sorry, I'm afraid we're not here to stay. He shoved his hands in his pockets. Just a few quick questions, and we must be on our way. First off, who is charging what? No, Prince Charging. It was the name one of your friends gave while he was here. We kind of liked it better than Masked Prince, and used that instead, Sam explained. Like our own little group name for the guy. Not what we're here for, Virgil muttered out, glancing at Roman. Right, sorry. Roman cleared his throat and looked around the table. They said there was a woman who the prince had saved and she was looking for him. A woman at the end of the table stood up, staring the pair down wearily. That's me. You have info or something? Or something. Virgil snickered to himself. Roman smiled and walked around the table, stopping when he met the woman face to face. This going to take much longer? Roman rolled his eyes and looked over at Virgil. You have no sense of dramatic tension, I swear. He turned and faced the woman. Your name, miss? She relaxed a bit, but continued to stare down Roman. Diane. A beautiful name. He reached a hand out and grabbed hers, holding it to his chest. I hear you were looking for this prince to give his thanks. He saved my life. She tugged her hand back and Roman let go, but it did not stop his smile. Thanks is the least I can do. Well, my dear Diane, I am not out for the glory, but I will happily take your gratitude. The room fell silent. Just promise to bring kindness to those around you. Princey, are you done? Virgil shifted on his feet uncomfortably. Roman turned and smiled at Virgil before throwing Diane a quick wink and returning to the man. Well, that's enough of that. We must... Wait, whoa, no. Sammy ran around the table and up to the pair. You're him? You can't just leave. Who are you? What's going on? I'm sorry, Sammy and friends, but we must be leaving. Roman threw an arm around Virgil's shoulders. I promised a wondrous night. Virgil huffed and turned away, blush growing on his face. Worst date I've ever had. We've only just begun, and you said you were okay with me stopping by since it was on the way. Despite the irritated tone, Roman was smiling at the other as Virgil hugged himself closer and tried hiding his blushing face. Though, you are right. I still have confidence I can make the most of this magical night. Roman turned and waved at the group of confused strangers as they watched the two walk out. You better. I'm only giving you this one chance, and if I don't like it, you're not getting another. Nonsense, Roman called out, holding the door open and bowing dramatically. Virgil scoffed and marched out quickly. You're already head over heels for me, admit it. The door closed and cut off the rest of the conversation as they watched the two from the front of the store. Right as they were about to disappear, Sammy ran up and flew out the front door, turning the way they went before stopping. The street was completely empty, despite the fact there was nowhere to go or duck into. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. Thank you so much for listening. There is one more chapter to go, so if you'd like to hear it, subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when it uploads tomorrow. Thank you for listening, and much like Thomas trying to recollect all his memories and thoughts, do your best.